Title on food, it'll very often say something like that. It'll be a very, very simple title. And therefore, Bollywood just felt like the right title for this book. We're very, very honored to have some very well-known contributors for this, and I want to thank each and every one of them. They've played a fabulous role in putting this book together for us, and my team. We've got our managing editor here, Alka, who worked really hard. We had a very big team. We have a team in Delhi who works in these products, and we have really spent a lot of time and effort. It has truly been a labor of love for us, and we're very, very proud for the product that we've created. Along with the stories, one of the things that we were probably not prepared for was the effort that it took to unearth the images that we could use. And it was, through these sort of, what should I say, the passion of some of the archivists and the passion of people who've loved Indian cinema and have been collectors of all of these images and memorabilia that we were really able to put this product together. And Mr. Asuja is one of those people who was really able to provide us with some beautiful images, some treasures that we probably a lot of people haven't seen in the past. That was
like the 80s and 90s movies from 80s and 90s, which haven't really although they have their place in the history of cinema, but they've not kind of found the same
own highlights. Yes. So if there was anger in the 70s, there was romance in the 60s, yes. And there was a socialist element. Thread of socialism in the pre-60s, So all that is reflected in the movies that were made in those era. But I feel, most importantly, post-50s, it is the stars who dominated the scene. Right. And so in the book, we had to take care of the great films, the great stars, and, the memorable songs and props, and as she some of the beautiful posters that were there. So it's all, everything contributed to make this book special,
Yes. Karan, your work was, I think, even more challenging in that you went back to the glorious pre-independence cinema as well, and which is, not much is known about it. We know a few movies from the time, but, the things like Hunter Wali, Devika Rani, we know about them, but we don't know too much about them. What was that process like to bring that alive in this book?
See, on one level, I think that was the most exciting part, actually, of the book for me. I've always been interested in the historical aspect of Indian cinema, and the one thing that FTII did when we kind of went over there. Is it working now? Yeah. And even at the FTII, we actually had an entire semester on Indian cinema history. Right. So it is something, which I was very into. So in that sense, of course, I think, for me, that was the most enjoyable part of the book. It had its pitfalls in the sense that there's been a very limited amount of writing on Indian cinema and its history. Off the cuff, I can think of Indian film by Barno Krishnaswamy, which used to be a Bible for us. I think so many cinemas of B.D. Garga, a pictorial history of Indian cinema, Firdos Rangonwala over there. And unfortunately, what's happened today is that it's very, very tough to, to look for stuff because everyone just goes straight to Wikipedia or IMDb and anyone can put up stuff and the facts are all over the place. I think the biggest challenge in that was to really get the facts right of what you want to say. And, be able to put the history of cinema and the eras that I was writing about in some sort of proper context. So in that sense, I would say that my Bible of research were more the older books and the older publications, because at that point of time, many of the people we are writing about were alive and the authors had actually interviewed them, had got quotes from them. So, one was trying to include as much that came from the horse's mouth, really, rather than, make up one's own thing.
Did you find it, Karan mentioned that he went back to a lot of the publications of the time, right? Did you find a difference in terms of the kind of reportage that you saw around the movies of the 90s particularly?
Straight off the bat, it was a lot of fun because, I'm a kid of the 90s. I started watching films in the 90s. So a lot of it was, essentially about just going back to my, I mean, growing up days where I was like, I mean, watching a film every Friday. And so, I mean, that was that. I mean, this essential thrill of a schoolboy sort of like rediscovering like his first love, so to speak. So that was really enjoyable. The second was, I mean, this thing about saying something fresh. That's a great question, I think, because I mean, what really helped for me was in the 90s. I would just watch films. I was really small, so I mean, I wasn't reading like good literature or good journalism on them. So I mean, all the thoughts and ideas that I had about the films were my own, so to speak. Like, I mean, there was no sort of like infiltration of anything else. But then, like, I mean, as you grow up and as you like, your engagement with cinema differs, right? And so I thought that juxtaposition was really interesting, where I was watching or like